All right, welcome back to Jack Sports TV. I'm one of your hosts, Brian Lyle. This is Damian Bell, and that's Pat Donovan. Today, got a lot of topics for you guys, but first we're going to start off with college football because I'm very excited about the college football season coming up. But there's a trend that I want to talk about first because it's something that that's caught my eye the last several years, and I think if something's not done about it, it's an easy way for teams to go ahead and compete for the national title and without doing it through stiff competition. I've got things broken down in what I call the Bobby Bowden Award. Shout out to Bobby Bowden, not a Florida State fan, nothing against the program, but one thing Bobby Bowden would always do was schedule anybody, any place, anytime. Line up my guys versus your guys, and let's see who's the best there is on the football field. And one thing I've noticed, guys, is, and I'm going to break this down a little bit further, but teams like the Miami Hurricanes, the Florida State Seminoles, the Oregon State Beavers, the Pitt Panthers, the Washington Huskies, the Oklahoma Sooners, and the Boise State Broncos. Those are teams that get that award. And why I say I get that award is because it all comes down to out-of-conference schedule. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But first, I know you probably have some thoughts about that. And if you do, just go ahead and take control.
Well, to touch on what you started off with, where some of your elite programs got to be elite programs by starting off the season with those 56-0 games, 77-3, you know, Florida versus Little Sisters of the Poor. You know the story, the way they start off the season. And, you know, that goes all the way back to about 15 or 20 years ago when the NCAA football season was the world's largest single elimination tournament, where you couldn't afford to lose that early game. You couldn't afford to get a primetime opponent, lose that game, and blow your shot at the national championship. But now, with the advent of the BCS, plus conference championship games, plus bowl games for every single team out there, now you have a little more chance to play around with your schedule. Get a tough team in there, but surround it around a couple of open weeks, a tune-up opponent here, one late in the season. I mean, the SEC has it so good now that every team in the conference can schedule 2 patsies early and 1 patsy before the last weekend of the season, to where, you know, in that November part of the year when everybody wants those quality wins, you can't afford to lose. So what better time to not lose than to schedule a weak opponent and watch everybody else in the top 10 beat each other up. And then you're in condition for your championship game. And it's no accident that every single NC2A championship game, national championship game, has had a team from the SEC in it. There hasn't been a year without it, and that's not by accident.
Look, basketball is a great sport, but I find football about 20 times more entertaining than I do basketball. However, I find college basketball 20 times more entertaining than college football. The reason for that? Every March, they get together and they do this crazy little thing where they crown a champion. College football hasn't done it in years. They don't crown a champion. They hand it off to somebody. A couple of years ago, Florida's national champion, while somebody else is sitting at home, undefeated. Utah is undefeated, but they just hand the championship to Florida. And every time you talk about a playoff, you get this crap about the regular season meaning something. Look, if it's a 4 or an 8-team playoff, the regular season's still going to mean something. You're still going to get into the playoffs. I'd even be up for a 16-team playoff. And honestly, if the best team doesn't win, I don't have a problem with that. I just want to see a champion crowned. Because you know what? To me, the best teams in the regular season, that's great. To me, the best teams win when it matters. Okay? The New England Patriots were not the best team in 2007. Because when it mattered in the Super Bowl, they lost that game. And to me, I don't give a damn about a regular season schedule, a regular season record. I want to see some playoffs. I want to see a team prove to me that they're the national champion, not just be handed that title.
Well, yeah, you bring up a great point, and that's the team. I'm a former college football player, but I got to admit, college basketball does have it right because it's the tournament. And what you find in the tournament is a lot of times, you know, you find out who can play when the pressure's tight, but you find out who can coach when the pressure's tight. You know, you look at Coach Calipari, and I like Coach Calipari. 5 guys in the first round, how do you not win with that? You know, what would you find out in the tournament on the football ranks would be some coaches can't coach when the pressure's tight. They just can't do it. And the fact that there is no tournament, you don't really have coaches that get exposed. Now, speaking of getting exposed, let me just expose some of these out-of-conference schedules. But first, let me talk about why these schools, Miami, Florida State, Oregon State, Pitt, Washington, Oklahoma, and Boise State, get the Bobby Bowden Award is because of who they're playing out of conference. You know, we'll just start with Miami. They get a pass with Florida A&M, okay? Traditional black college. They're not going to get the top. They're going to get the leftover blacks. They can't compete with that. They get a pass. Ohio State.
I'm just glad you were the one to say the leftover blacks, because you know if I said it, we're screwed.
Well, it is what it is. Ohio State, that's a big-time conference. You're scheduling that out of conference, you know, so that's big time. Pittsburgh, okay, South Florida. You look at Florida State. Sanford, they get a pass, but lo and behold, they put Oklahoma on the schedule, okay? Brigham Young and Florida, they're going to play no matter what. Oregon State, Texas Christian, okay? You got to give these guys props. The Mountain West Conference champs. Jerry Hughes just got drafted in the second round by the Colts. These teams put out guys in the NFL, okay? Gary Patterson knows what he's doing. They also, okay, Oregon State's also playing Boise State, the WAC champs. Ryan Clady, a lot of people say he's the best young tackle in the National Football League, left tackle for the Broncos. He's a Boise State guy, okay? Kyle Wilson. Kyle Wilson just got drafted by the Jets in the first round. So just because these are smaller programs, you can't do that argument anymore. These are powerhouse programs. The Pitt Panthers, okay, they got Utah on that schedule. New Hampshire, they get a pass. Miami, Florida International, Notre Dame. Washington, okay, they got Brigham Young on there, all right? They've got Nebraska and Syracuse. Again, when I break down some other Pac-10 team schools, you'd be surprised who Southern Cal has on there. Just to hint, they're playing teams like Hawaii. No disrespect to them, but that's not Nebraska, okay? Oklahoma, Utah State, they get a pass. But Florida State, I mean, I know I'm looking forward to that game, Oklahoma, Florida State. Air Force is legit, and Cincinnati's legit. And Boise State, for them to be able to open up against Virginia Tech and Oregon State, they get a pass with Toledo. The point is they could coast through their schedule. They've already done enough over the years that they can say, yeah, you know what, we're not going to play anybody. We're just going to play Toledo, State U, and whoever else it is. Give them credit for playing Virginia Tech and Oregon State. More proof as to why I love these teams that go out of the box and man up, you know, show courage, show they got balls. And I wish I had a trophy to mail to these schools because they truly get it. And to me, that's what championship football is all about.
Well, the consistent thing with your list there, you named a bunch of teams, none of them that play in the SEC. Because like I said, you know, we've gone 5 or 6 years deep with everybody saying that the SEC is the be-all, end-all of college football conferences. And when you've got from top to bottom all of these teams that say, well, you know what? We don't have to worry about playing anybody prime time on our schedule because when we play in our conference, we got all the best already. You know, when you look at Florida State, you know, for years they were an independent team, which meant they had to go schedule the best team so people would look upon them favorably. And all those teams that Brian named are teams that are trying to get back to that super elite status, which means you got to go on the road and play these super teams. You know, USC has to play Notre Dame every year because Notre Dame used to be an independent. Now they're a big money maker, so it's a draw. They've got other good schools that they end up having to play. California in the conference that's come to prominence. And now when you look at teams like Oklahoma, which was a big-time program all before, and they've had good success for the past 3 to 5 years, but people don't look at the Sooners and say, this is a prime-time elite team, so they have to go play Florida State home and home. They have to take a road trip and play a tough team once every year. And that's just the way college football is right now.
And look, it boils down to this. Money. And everybody says that, well, they want to keep the BCS around because of money. And I go, what? Are you kidding me? You want to keep the Look, I'm pretty sure that the NCAA brings in a little bit of coin during March Madness. And don't tell me they couldn't do 10 times as much with a college football tournament, because the fact is they could. They could make 10 times the money with a college football tournament that they do with March Madness. So what the hell are you doing? Listen, when you talk about money, one thing you don't have to spend any money on is going over to see the girls over at Vegas Showgirls, because when you have a ticket stub to any sporting event, you get in for free. So get over to Vegas Showgirls, and we'll be back on Jack Sports TV.